Love that. So we're jumping right in here. Obviously, Alvaro Rios and I are old friends. He's somebody I think many of you know for many years. He's worn a lot of different hats: consultant, minister of hydrocarbons, one of many ministers of hydrocarbons during a certain period of time in Bolivia, executive secretary of ALADE, and so we've had chance. I think you've come to La Jolla in all kinds of different capacities: consultant, government official, ALADE official. So Alvaro and I, he's been on lockdown, and one of the things when he was in lockdown, we talked about writing a short paper to introduce some concepts for the conference, and so hopefully you all have been able to see the paper. It's on the site here under reports. We put it out last week. It's a great paper, to the point, concise, al grano. Alvaro, why don't you summarize some of the key points there, some of the findings, and we'll open it up to questions. I've got always a few, but help us understand what you wrote for us if people haven't had a chance to read that document yet.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. It's great. I'm glad you are able to wear a coat. I try mine. It doesn't fit. so you imagine why. Okay, so yeah, that's right. I did write that little paper for you guys, and I hope some of the fellows who are joining us this late in the afternoon here in the Southern Cone and lunchtime in La Jolla were able to read it. I'll try to do a little summary on it, and I'll start by saying that Vaca Muerta is indeed a very prolific shale. Okay. And there is countries with oil like Peru, and maybe Colombia is a country with oil, but I would say that there is oil and gas countries. Argentina is one of them. Certainly Brazil with pre-salt is one. Venezuela is one, and Mexico is another one. So in that regards, there has been extensive drilling of pilot wells in Vaca Muerta with excellent results. Starting first on the gas window, because the government did give incentives for pricing. So remember the Macri incentive prices that came with a ramp down of $6.50, $6 in order to match LNG imports. That was great to a point, but then the government again did not comply with how it promised. Then PASO election came, the primary elections in Argentina, and the peso just went down the drain, and dollar went skyrocketing up against the peso, or vice versa, whichever you want to think about. And also new government came in place. So basically with no tariffing restructuring and the dollar going up against the peso, I mean, most frackers that had developed drilling, extensive fracking, extensive, not pilot drilling, but development drilling, what we call factory drilling. And of course, this production of gas went up heavily. And I just remember Tech Petrol in just about close to 18 to 24 months, they gave us almost 18 million cubic meters per day. So that is pretty quick for a lot of gas. And that's just one company. And if you think about that, there is a couple of dozen companies with plays in Vaca Muerta, they can really bring it up. But what I always have said, and I'm sorry for my Argentinian friends next door, Vaca Muerta is great, but Argentinians on the surface are not great creating policies for bringing massive investment and continuously, for Jeremy, that's the problem. They bring in investment for a period of time, like this time. They brought gas production up. They started exports to Chile. They reduced imports from Bolivia. They reduced LNG imports, and now fracking is back to zero again. So that is the cycle of Argentina, I have to say. And now, I mean, with low pricing and COVID in front of us, demand is down. No infrastructure has been developed to bring more gas into other places in Argentina where demand is. and including there was an international agency that during Davos meeting that was asked to develop infrastructure to help bring reserves or production from Argentina down to southern Brazil. But the conclusion of that meeting was very clear, Jeremy. Why do we want to build new infrastructure when the Argentinians can't fill up the pipelines they have with Chile, and they still have these uninterruptible contracts that they cut off all the time? So they need to solve, Vaca Muerta needs to solve the issue of continuous drilling, because as you know, fracking peaks and then drops. And if you don't drink continuously, then you can build all the pipelines you like. But if you don't give that term security of supply, I mean, buyers in Chile will not sign and will not rely only on Argentinian gas. And I wouldn't worse think that Brazilian users on the other hand, which is changing dynamics. I mean, Petrobras is it's not going to be anymore the main player there, will sign when you know there's not commitment to long periods of drilling time. So what the Argentinians first have to show us is that they can really fill up those pipelines from Chile, replace that coal that's there, and try to play against LNG. That is the main thing that they have to do, and the country has to do to provide it as itself as a supplier of natural gas and a large producer of natural gas, and bringing Vaca Muerta from being a Vaca Muerta to a Vaca Viva. Okay, so in that regards, just let me the relationship with Chile has been of love and hate, and now it was starting to be somehow of love again. And then now cuts are being brought into effect into Chile. Now Chilean users are mad, and of course it creates that uncertainty. Okay, same thing with Bolivia. When Vaca Muerta started pulling back up production, they came to Bolivia and reduced demand, and they changed the contract. And they say, oh, I need less gas now. So really, what I think, and my conclusion of the paper I wrote, and I hope some of you guys have time to read, is that Argentina production will start falling, and we will see beginning of 2021, unless a miracle happens, we will see more LNG imports, and we will start screaming for more Bolivian gas. Now, Bolivian gas, people in Bolivia, including government authorities, I would say, are kind of scared, in quotes, of selling gas to Argentina because they may not get paid. It happened in the past, and that's a problem. So if you understand this dynamic, so Bolivia is prepared to supply northern Argentina with natural gas, but then send our declining production down to Brazil. I mean, we recently signed, YPFB and Petrobras recently signed a 4 to 6 deal agreement between 14 and 20 cubic million meters per day. And that production has been reduced because of COVID. That's, of course, temporary, but Bolivia has capacity that cannot supply Brazil new demand and new players that are asking for gas in Bolivia. And we cannot supply because we have a long-term contract with Argentina until 2026, which establishes volumes up to 27 cubic meters. So right now, Bolivia is in a very, I would say, difficult situation because it has an addenda until this year end with EASA in Argentina, but it doesn't know how long it's going to go and what the demand from Argentina really is going to be. Now, things in Brazil are changing, and as we speak, things are happening. I mean, Brazil pays the most expensive gas in the world, and these industrial users, large industrial users, are desperately looking for LNG supply, pre-salt supply, Bolivian supply, and also maybe one day Argentinian supply. So they're opening the market. The pipeline that goes from Bolivia, it's being liberalized. Open access is there. They're putting in weekly, daily, and monthly supplies. You can contract on the pipeline. So it's becoming an open market. And a lot of companies are coming to try to get Bolivian gas. But until we settle with Argentina what they're going to need, then we don't have enough production to meet these new users. And in the end, and the cope of that is that Bolivia does not know if Argentina is going to pay. And Bolivian economy, like Ecuador and like Rene said, is becoming dry. So when things become dry, things become desperate, and really, that is a little bit of the Southern Cone dynamics. I promised to you I will speak 15 minutes. I did so, and so I am prepared for your always tough questions. And the always questions.
The treasury is dry. Yeah, no, that's true. I think the situation of the region, with few exceptions, that's the case, right? I mean, this has been the point we've heard over and over. The current crises are not, similar to 28 financial meltdown because of where the region finds itself, commodities, oil and gas. So look, there's a million different things to talk about here. We've got several questions. Let me start with one thing. Let me put two things together, and then I'll read the questions and come back with the audience. I want the audience questions here. Reserves. We heard the gentleman from Peru, Petro. You know about what Bolivia. Let's talk about the reserves question, right? Because one of the biggest issues, I mean, we go back to the anillo energético, right? Bolivia and Peru and the whole, one of the biggest questions was, well, who was going to anchor? What country was going to anchor that in terms of reserves? Sounds like you're a little bit doubtful about Argentina. Yes, there's the rocks in the ground, there's the materiality. But the question of reserves, and then let me add on top of that this infrastructure challenge, right? This is the same conversation we've been having wherever you might go, right? Whether it's the Peru pipeline to lock in the security of demand, whether it's the Argentine evacuation of Vaca Muerta, infrastructure challenge. So talk about reserves and infrastructure. I mean, you did already a little bit, but how do we solve the...
Are you talking about miracles? Well, they can happen. Okay. Well, let me say that Bolivian reserves are due decline during the Morales administration. That natural gas gave them $47 billion to spend, and not properly spent, I would say. And they left us with decline in reserves and decline in production. Just think that in 2013 we had 61 cubic million meters of gas capacity production. Right now that is around 52, 53 million cubic meters of daily production. So it is going down. And now there is a little bit of exploratory activity in Bolivia performed by Shell, Total, Repsol, and Petrobras. It's not enough. And hopefully some of that, I am crossing my fingers, is some of that. But reserves in Bolivia are a very political issue, and they're declining. I would say we have between 6 and 7 trillion cubic feet as we speak of reserves, but production is going down. And like I said, Bolivia has to discover. As opposed to Argentina, Argentina does not have to discover anymore. Argentina has to drill a lot of development wells to produce in Vaca Muerta, which is already, they know what to do. They know what length to drill. They know how many frac stages to put. They know what type of sand to put in, and they can really produce that gas. But Argentina is no place to invest. Bolivia is still a place to invest. We have major companies here also looking, but the pipelines are not needed. We have a lot of infrastructure in place. The Bolivia-Brazil pipeline is half empty now. Bolivia-Cuiabá Brazil pipeline is almost empty. Bolivia-Argentina pipeline is half capacity. These pipelines to Chile are at 10-20%. The pipeline to Uruguay is at 5% of capacity, and that pipeline to Uruguayana has plenty of capacity to bring up a power plant or new industry there. So I don't think we have in the Southern Cone a pipeline capacity or infrastructure like Peru does, but we need exploration. And in the case of Argentina, like I said, Jeremy, it's continuous drilling, because Bolivia can hit a nice well, is very cost productive, and maybe have 2 TCFs of gas, but that can produce for a long time, as opposed to Argentina that needs to continue drilling. So there are two different models, and I think one is more cost effective. I would say Bolivia cost of production is about 40-50% lower than cost of production in Vaca Muerta. So it's to be seen whether this little exploration in Bolivia gives any results and we have more. And it's to be seen if Argentina one day can drill wells like in the United States.
Well, that's a perfect segue to a question here, and it's exactly what our friend Milton Chavez would like you to comment upon. You know, we've seen the shale boom, shale gale, all these wonderful terms of what's happened. We heard about this a little bit from Assistant Secretary Frank Fannin just a while ago. What, in your opinion, will take Latin American unconventional resources, and Milton refers to La Luna in Colombia or Vaca Muerta in Argentina, to be quote-unquote globally competitive? So what's, again, all these miracle, but what is the magic recipe to boost those to become globally competitive hydrocarbon or unconventional hydrocarbon plays?
Well, governments and NOCs, neither YPF, neither Ecopetrol have the money to do it. I would say that Colombia has a very stable framework for investment. Argentina does not have that. So what Argentina needs to have is Argentinians to put its act together and at once see that Vaca Muerta is their only, for now, solution to their dollar problem. So if they don't do that and they don't see that Vaca Muerta really has to have a very, like Rene Ortiz put in its place, a very rules that are really long time, 30, 40 years, Argentina is not going to come out from this because it's years of the same situation. So I think Argentina is the quite more prolific shale. I've seen productivity better than the Permian. So it's a matter of rules and Argentinian letting a sector that could not only develop natural gas, but they can go to the oil window and start producing because they have $30, $35 break-even costs. So that is what I will say to my old friend Milton Chavez there, that it's rules. I mean, we don't have long enough rules like, for example, Peru and Colombia are having over the past 2 decades, I would say.
So let's go back. There was a question, if you could update Bolivia. You talked a little bit about, obviously, from the reserves and from the political situation of exploration and the role of YPFB. You know, we've seen in Bolivia is a great example of this swinging pendulum of the role of the state. Just give us a 1-minute update on Bolivia in terms of, you know, what's going on with policy right now, particularly vis-a-vis COVID. And then as you answer that, there's another great question about which countries are the most resilient to COVID and price crises. So talk a little bit about Bolivia and think about some of the other countries and let us know where you rank them or where you see them in terms of their resilience.
Okay. Well, an upgrade on Bolivia. First of all, Evo Morales basically did the same job that Correa did in Ecuador and Chavez did in Venezuela. I mean, they took over the industry. An inefficient YPFB, it's a very inefficient company. It has about 7,000 employees, of which I'm sure they can operate with 3,000. And they have, this urea plant that cost the country $1 billion and it's not operating for 8 months. We have a huge separation plant in Yacuiba to put LPG and it's operating at 20-25% of capacity. And we have a small LNG plant that doesn't work. So a lot of money has been pumped. Now, I would say that Rene Ortiz, I would love to do the job in the next 2 years that Rene Ortiz is doing, because that's what Bolivia will need to do. We'll need to write new rules, and they will need to establish, take away subsidies, and put a new platform for new investments in Bolivia. As they are now, our current law and our current political constitution does not allow for companies to invest here, not even in lithium. That is one of the preferred minerals elements now. So, and I would like to ask you again the second part of the question.
Yeah, it's a question about sort of resiliency, right? So, I mean, you're talking obviously about natural gas markets, but think about, you know, you've obviously, you know, laid out how you see Bolivia right now. But what about some of the other countries? You've also been clear about Argentina, but this question of resiliency, and I think this question came from a gentleman in Brazil. The resiliency and how we're going to navigate and recover from this crisis is going to be extremely important, and that's going to take leadership. So.
Well, really, that's a very difficult question. The demand and low pricing has hit Bolivia, has hit Argentina, is hitting Brazil, and is hitting most countries because we most are natural gas and oil and mineral exporters. So this really is taking on and is drying up economy. So the big thing, I think what this is going to happen is something that we wrote the paper for you, I think 3-4 years behind. I would say that this will accelerate transfer to the private sector with much more incentives for attracting private because governments are really, really dry.
The pure, like you cited, Renee, the empty treasury, the dry treasury, the lack of money, especially entering this current crisis, will undergird again this swinging pendulum in different marketplaces, I guess is the best way to put it. So here's a real easy one for you from our friend Thomas O'Keefe, who's if I'm not mistaken a Chilean. I don't know if he's in Santiago these days, but he writes and says, given the difficulties with Argentina and Brazil, why is Bolivia still not looking to Chile as an alternative market for its natural gas, given the change of administration in La Paz? That's the easiest one of the day.
Yeah, remember our friend Ajenjo from Metanex?
Yes, Francisco, I think.
He and I had a couple of drinks after the conference, and we solved all the problem. But again, I think there is in Bolivia the sentiment of gas not flowing to Chile. It's just in society. It's embedded in society, and whoever politician tries to bring and step up production to Chile and really get northern Chile and get some of that coal that's there, we just get hit by politics. So I think the sea and the ocean problem has not been settled down. It's not an issue that's been solved. And the only thing it's going against Bolivia. It's not going against Chile. So I don't think it will ever happen. Ajenjo and I could not solve it. So politicians will not solve it.
It is we call it the third rail, right? There's certain issues that a politician touches it and that's it. We're running out of time. Oh, we got a couple more questions. So dial back into Bolivia. There's a question from Pietro Pitts here about value-added products such as ammonia, LPG, and urea for export. I think you talked a little bit about those projects. You said they're not really functional. But what's going to happen, and then you alluded to maybe opening up to private investment. So what's going to happen with some of those projects in Bolivia?
No more industrialized. I mean, the Bolivian people have been hit with the key word that we need to industrialize our natural gas, and they never understood that countries industrialize the gas when they have stranded gas. But Bolivian gas had a market. I mean, nice market in Chile, nice market in Argentina, nice market in Brazil. And so there was no need for industrialization. So we built a 100 million urea plant, which for 8 months cannot produce. And it will not produce. It will be the most stupid monument to NOC investment in the region. It will stay there forever. It's in the middle of nowhere, and it cannot get economical for whatever. So no more LPG facilities. YPFB, I would say, finances are going down the hill, and I think somebody will have maybe to offer that urea plant for operation and marketing capacity, and maybe somebody can take that dead body out of the jungle there, where it's sitting there and it's just making YPFB lose between $15 and $20 million per year without producing anything. So that's what NOCs run by politicians do. So never do it again. We hope that everybody that are listening, do not let NOCs build big refineries or big projects, because Petrobras did the same thing, and they end up in the hands of private sector, with the states losing a lot of money.
I can't imagine what you're referring to about right there, but so just real quickly, it strikes me, what is the calendar, speaking of politics, what's the election has been set in Bolivia?
Yeah, they were set for May. COVID postponed them, of course. And guess what? I have to tell my colleagues there, that friends that are listening to us, that yesterday we had the biggest scandal in Latin America in Bolivian corruption. The Minister of Health bought these respirators that do not work properly, and secondly, they were priced at almost 3 to 4 times of the pricing at the factory. So there's a big turmoil against President Yanin Áñez. I don't know how this is going to end up. Mass is again back on politics and accusing the new government of being corrupt, and now Mass is back on track, and they do have a 30-35% of voting intention. So we will see Mass coming back. So for those of you that we thought we got rid of socialists of the 21st century, we did not.
Well, politics are divided everywhere, right? And it's a polarized moment, and the kinds of things like COVID, I would suggest that these moments of crisis, unfortunately, don't seem to be bringing us together on some levels. I mean, on many levels, obviously, sheer survival and making sure as human beings and we work together and we're healthy. But when it comes to politics, I think we with these kinds of crises make us double down on which side we're on. And so, we see it here, we see it in the U.S., and we see it everywhere. But speaking of coordination, let's wrap up with a question about Bolivia and Peru from Jose Chavez about whether not what's the state of coordination between Bolivia and Peru to export LPG to the southern part of the latter. And so talk just any kind of final thoughts you want to lay out in terms of, we haven't talked too much about regional integration or bilateral integration positively. So final thoughts, Alvaro?
Peru and Bolivia will not integrate, neither electrically, neither with a pipeline. There may be a few shipments of LPG trucks going to southern Peru to some demand that's far from the coast, and that is as far as Peru and Bolivia will go. I mean, nothing will happen. I mean, they have complementary systems. They have natural gas. They have hydroelectricity, and they got natural gas. So, and thinking about exporting through ILO with current reserves in Bolivia and current situation, I mean, you cannot even think of a pipeline going to the Pacific coast at this time. So we have to change Bolivian sector, and we have to do what René Ortiz is trying to do in Ecuador. We wish him good luck. We need to do that here in a year or so.
As always, there's so much more to talk about, but there's more details in the paper we've referenced, and there's always the La Jolla Conference 2021. So we'll welcome Alvaro back here in person next year. Alvaro Rios, live from Santa Cruz, Bolivia, Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Bolivia. Thank you for joining us, sharing your keen insights as always. You never hold back. We appreciate that. It's amazing how fast time flies on by. Thanks everyone for joining us. That brings day 3 to a close. So we are wrapping up day 3 of the virtual La Jolla Conference. Join us tomorrow morning. We'll take up day 4. We'll actually get into Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and then we'll talk about NOCs, Alvaro. One of the questions I want to understand is what's the future of the NOCs, and we have a great panel to look at that. We'll talk about Guyana. We'll talk about Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, sort of new areas to be part of this conversation. Thanks again, Alvaro. Great to see you.
Jeremy, and hopefully see you next year, okay? In person.
Wonderful. Be safe. Take care.
You too.
See everyone tomorrow.
Bye.